I'm really sorry about that. Again, good afternoon, everyone.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Hello, hello. My name is Joanna Mangaliman.
And I am Angelica Pilapil, and we are your hosts for today's webinar.
So, before we begin, if you have any questions regarding our today's discussion, don't hesitate. Send them us and type them in the comment section of whatever social media platform you're watching this webinar on, and we'll be here to relay them to our guest speaker.
Thank you, Miss Joanna. Um, Before we start, let me ask you, how are you today? It's
So
been
far, so good. How
para
about our
mawala.
viewers? How are you? I hope your day is doing great so far.
Yeah.
How about you?
And
How are you?
I am good also, and I hope that our viewers are all settled in and just relax and listen, and I hope they can get some knowledge and hope for whatever you wanted to have today. Just relax and watch us. Again, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the live webinar series of SMAPH, an e-learning marketplace for Filipino professionals where one can develop a relevant and in-demand skills through masterclasses in different fields of learning. If you want to learn more about us, feel free to visit our page at www.sme.ph. For those who are watching this webinar on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn, feel free to share the link to the stream to people who you think will be interested in today's topic.
That's right. We are also inviting everyone to join us in our live learning series, where seasoned experts such as our speaker today in various fields from agriculture and business to marketing to futures thinking to relationships to health and fitness and more help you to develop your skills and advance both in your personal life and in your career. So if you are interested in learning more about the live learning series, just head on over to our website. Again, it's www.esme.ph and click on the live learning tab. We hope you can join us soon.
So thank you. Um, so what is our topic for today? So why do we need to be future literate? So when we talk about the future, what usually comes to your mind? So for myself, I think like my dreams, and hoping to fulfill those dreams. But do you know that you can channel your future thinking to make a change in your present? How? Is it through the help of foresighting or future thinking? What is foresighting or future thinking? Well, we know and will know more about this as we welcome our guest speaker for today.
That is correct. And I'm sure everyone that's watching is so excited to meet our guest speaker for today. So, our guest speaker for today is one of Asia's leading global futurists and the only Filipino futurist with full membership in the Association of Professional Futurists, or APF. He was recently elected to the board of directors of the Association of Professional Futurists, a global futurist organization with 500 members from over 40 countries. He is also the chief futurist and director of the Center For Engaged Foresight, a premier global futures thinking and strategic foresight consulting firm based in Manila. So, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome our speaker, the very bright Professor Shermon Cruz.
Hi, Joanna. Hi, Angelica. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for that kind introduction, and hope everyone is feeling well and good amidst the pandemic that we need to, conquer on a daily basis. Because as we all know, it might drag on for the next couple of years. But then I believe Filipinos are resilient. I think we are even beyond resilient. That so far so good. We're living the best lives as we can at this very moment.
Yes, so thank you for that. And I think the pandemic, it's not, I know it's not a good news, but the pandemic gave us, the opportunity to better ourselves and the time
Yes.
to, know more about yourself and know more the people who you live in, talk to people that you haven't seen. I guess
Yeah.
it's the advantage, or I mean not
That's
advantage,
true.
it's
That's
the
true.
other side to look for the
Yeah, in
pandemic.
fact,
Yeah.
for me personally, the pandemic gave me a lot of time to pause, and rethink and reimagine my future.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
as we introduce everything, and we already said that me myself, and I think Joanna is also, curious what is foresighting, or what is futures thinking. Can I ask, or can you share us what is foresighting, or what is futures thinking?
Oh yes, very basic. Why futures thinking? Why the future with an S? In fact, I just realized now that the title should have been "Why do we need to be futures literate and not future literate?" There are three things that I would like to say here. One is that the future is the future. Like there's no one single future out there. Rather it is futures. The future is plural with an S. It implies that there are multiplicities in the way we imagine the future. Many people are trained, to do that because they have realized and they thought that okay, as an individual, I have the power to actually anticipate possibilities, but not everyone has that mature power of anticipation. It's a natural capacity. Like every day when we wake up, you plan out what you're gonna do the next 2 hours, or perhaps last week you just planned what you're going to do today, you put that in the calendar, but that is not what I call anticipation. That's a basic thing that we do on a daily basis. In fact, that is instinctive. But that power becomes anticipatory when we learn how to imagine the things that does not exist yet. And that's the second point that I would like to say here. When you do futures thinking, you train yourself, you capacitate yourself, you build your skill set to venture into an unknown world. Now, why do I say that the future is an unknown world? Because that's the third point that I would like to drive in here. It's because the future does not exist yet, right? There is no
Yeah.
such thing as a future data. The future is not the present. We always say that the future is now, but the future only becomes now if we have developed the capacity and a skill set to imagine the future that we want. And we when I say want, that's the fourth thing that I would like to emphasize here. One thing is not just about one thing for the sake of one thing. One thing is that the ability and the skill set to really know what you want, and what we want should be preferred. Most of the time when we try to think about the future we want, we're not even aware if that is the preferred future that we want. So four things, right? The futures with a nest. The future is plural. There's no one single future out there. Second, the future does not exist yet. And if the future is something that does not exist yet, that is something that we can actually create. But then for many, the ability to create is not apparent because the capability and the skill set to anticipate the future is not developed in most of us, personally and institutionally for organizations. And third is that the future is something that we can actually prefer. Those are the things that I would like to say here when we talk about futures thinking. So when we say futures thinking, the thinking comes in because futures become some sort of a mindset. It becomes automatic. If I am faced with a particular situation or circumstances, like whether it is an opportunity or a wicked problem, if you have developed the capacity to anticipate possibilities, it becomes faster for you to anticipate, and then it makes you as an individual or a decision maker or an organization more decisive.
That is
Okay.
very
Thank you so much. Well, Sir Sherman, if futures thinking is about anticipating, so is it just the same with advanced mag-isip?
Uh, Not. Yes and no, of course, di ba? So, kasi pag sinabi mong advance ka mag-isip, ang projection mo is from the now to the future. Diba? Advance ka mag-isip from the now to the future. But then the futures thinking or futurist or developing a futures mindset flip the process. Binabaliktad mo yan. You think from the future to the now. Alam mo, have you seen the movie Back to the Future? Di ba?
Oh,
So, have you seen that? Have you watched the Back to the Future or perhaps yung X-Men, the Days of the Future
Oh, yeah,
Past?
yeah.
Diba? In that movie, there is this plot. The plot in the movie is that in order for you to change the past, you have to change the future. Diba? So
Oh,
in futures thinking, that's the process. You have to go, travel, journey into the future, and then once you're there, you immerse yourself in that alternative future world of yours, diba? In that alternative future environment of yours. And then once you immerse in that process, in that world, and you know how it feels like to live in that future, you go back to the present and start doing something on Monday morning. That's the process. It's not like today, diba, Monday, I want to be like this in the future. You know, that's not futures thinking. That's forecasting. But when you start from the future, let's just say you ask yourself, how might my life or organizations be like in the year 2050? So imagine today that today is the year 2050. Yeah. At this very moment, imagine that today is 2050. How might it feel like to live like in your preferred future world? But then the point here is that first you have to know what your preferred future is. Because otherwise, there's no direction, there's no vision. The vision is very crucial and critical. But then vision is not just a statement that we put on the wall that we discussed in the organization, just write the vision for the sake of it. No, visioning is all about experiencing and feeling what the vision feels like when it happens. So futures thinking is like that. You know, the the future, like the past, is ever present. Like when we go back to the past, diba, you feel it. Diba? We learned history, and then we always go to the back and to the past, and you feel, especially the traumas. Diba? Most of the time when we try to recollect something, it's always about the trauma. Diba? So you feel it, and then suddenly at that very moment you cry. No, so the future also is imagined in that way. But then until the future is clear and vivid, that you will be able to feel it, because otherwise you won't be able to feel what the future is like. And that is the power of foresight. That is the power of foresight. Humanity might not be able to go to the Mars if they haven't envisioned it, in the first place.
mhm.
Now we're sending robots, diba?
so if as you've said, it's okay, or I mean, it's good to imagine your future. It's good to vision your future. If it okay lang ba, or is it okay to be ambitious about your future, or it's okay to be ambitious when it comes to I mean, imagining your future? So
In futures thinking, it's not really about being ambition or about your ambitions, because
yeah.
when you say ambition, you're trying to, like, some sort of close the future to a particular idea of yourself, in the
Mhm.
near, short term, or long term future. Futures thinking, I would like to point out here, is developing the capacity to think in plurality, diba?
Oh,
Alternative futures, diba? That's why it's futures. You're trying to imagine yourself in a situation of alternative future worlds. Like,
Mhm.
how might I live like in a future in a future world wherein there is personal transformation or organizational transformation? How would it look like? How does it feel like to live in a transformed world of yours? Diba? But then you have to define what is transformation for you as far as you're concerned. And then second is that you just don't imagine what's transformation. Diba? Because that might not even happen. Diba? So how might you be able to do that? Okay, you try to also imagine your future world, your personal or organizational or professional future world in a collapse scenario. Diba? How might
Oh,
it feel like to live in failure? Diba? Diba? How might it
yeah.
feel like to live in failure? Now, if you know how it feels like and look like to live in failure, you will be able to better avoid that collapse scenario of future of yours. Diba? Now, if you try to think of in terms of how might it feel like to live in a weird future, in a strangely beautiful, weird future, a future world that you haven't even thought about, when in fact you try to look at your life, that normally happens, diba? The outliers, diba? You try
Yeah.
to plan for something, but you end up becoming another something, diba? But that is a surprise. That is a wild card for some people. That's a shock, you know. And apparently, parang, and you will only realize it that you're fortunate enough, perhaps, that you have failed because it led you to another future world. But then, in futures thinking, it gives you the ability to anticipate, the world that and the world that is unknown to you. And in fact, I remember this idea, from my mentor, Jim Dater, when he said that if there's an idea of the future, it must at first seem ridiculous. you know
Oh,
if an idea
Yeah.
is not absurd, there is no hope for it.
Yeah.
Is that an ambition? I don't know. But what I'm trying to say here is that an idea about the future at first must seem ridiculous. It has to feel impossible. Because otherwise, if the future that you tried to craft for yourself, is not impossible, but only perhaps informed by trends, di ba? That can never be transformative.
Yes, I get what is Sir Sherman is trying to say. If the idea is not absurd, wala siyang pag-asa. Like yung idea nga na pwede tayong tumira sa Mars, 'di ba?
yeah.
Kung tutuusin, that's an absurd idea, but nagsisend na nga sila ng robots do'n, 'di ba?
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
Sir Sherman,
Hmm.
what interests you in doing this futures thinking and studying or charting the future?
You know, two things. One is, boredom. Because when you're bored, you're trying to like get out from that boredom. And second is, I've always been in search for something different, for
Mhm.
some alternative realities. Personally, that actually provoked me to look for something different. And then when I was searching for something different, it led me to learn about on Google. I learned about this on Google, futures thinking. And then nagkaroon ako ng interest. Ginoogle ko siya, futures thinking. And then I saw, in one of the articles that I read, that there is what they called alternative realities. That the reality that you have right now is not just the reality that's out there. There is also what you call the imagined reality. You know, which leads us to the next point, that the currency of foresight, the currency of futures thinking, is imagination. So for many people, the ability to imagine is sleeping, is unawakened, diba? So that is the process. That's the currency. The money of foresight. It's imagination. Sinabi nga ni Albert Einstein, di ba? Anong sinabi niya? The highest form of knowledge, ladies and gentlemen, is imagination. But imagination from what? You can actually imagine from, informed by problems, informed by news headlines, by the hit songs that you listen every day on the radio, blah, blah, blah. But then what makes foresight and futures thinking difference, that this is imagination from the future. If you have the power, capability to imagine, let's just say, the next 50 years of your life, I don't know, personally, is that power? I think so. It is. Now, if you are a nation or an organization or in a business or a decision maker, you have that capacity and capability to imagine. It becomes some sort of a power. Would that be useful? I don't know. It depends on the person who's saying it and actually who applies imagination. But we've seen that like these unicorns today. Diba? These people has a very strong, vivid power of imagination, because when you develop that power and capacity to imagine and you feel it, you become, as I said from the very start, more decisive and
Okay.
more creative, of course.
I think it's the power of the mind really to build a future that you might think it's impossible, but it might, or you think that it's crazy na maiisip mo yung mga ganitong bagay. And as I've read, kasi nag-search po ako, like I read something that future can change your today. So napaisip po ako. So paano mababago or paano change nung future mo yung today, sir?
Of course. Now, this is where we go into the process. Diba? Futures is not just doing for future's sake. In order for you to actually use the future as an asset, a tool, and a resource to change today, is that you must learn the tools and the methods that futurists invented, to help you reframe the present. Diba?
Yeah.
Each and every day we wake up in the morning, it means something. Diba? It means to you, it means something. And that meaning that we put into today will define the future that you're going to get or create. If you're empowered, you're going to shape your future. But if you're not, if you're disempowered, you do not have the agency to shape the future. Sunod ka lang sa uso. 'Di ba? You'll just be dragged everywhere, 'di ba? By the wind. It's like a boat who doesn't have a direction. It's gone by the wind. So it doesn't have to be like that, 'di ba? That's suffering. 'Di ba? You are powerless to even create and shape your future. And that is what futures thinking is all about. It enables the people, the organization, the decision maker to craft and shape the future that we want. But how are you going to do it? You have to reframe your Monday morning. You have to change the way you look at things, because the way we look at things is informed by our experiences, by the past normally. But does the past, should we allow the past to define what the future will have? You have to challenge your assumptions. So that's the futures thinking. You learn the tools and the methods that enables you to challenge your assumptions about the now and how you perceive the future. It's always about assumptions. We make assumptions on a daily basis, diba? But have we ever tried to reflect, to question the assumptions that we have? Pag-isipan natin yon. We challenge ourselves by questioning ourselves. So that's where the process of future starts, by questioning the future that you perceive.
So we need to be empowered to have that capacity.
Oh yes, that is
So,
why
so
futures. Yeah,
yeah.
Joanna, that is why futures literacy is a skill set. Futures literacy is a capability to use the future as an asset, a resource, and a tool to change today.
So can you tell us, sir, how might we enhance our capacity to use the future as an asset, resource, tool to innovate in our present?
Yes, that's the futures thinking, or futures literacy is a learning journey. Diba? It is a process, it is a journey. It doesn't like overnight, bang, diba? Like a
Mhm.
genie in a bottle, you get your three wishes. It doesn't work like that. You have to start by learning how to do it. And futures literacy and futures thinking 101 is learning by doing it. So we learn how to do, to use the future as an asset and resource that you can actually exploit, diba, for your advantage. So futures literacy, if a person or an organization is future literate, it becomes a competitive advantage. Imagine mo, kung nauuna ka sa mga bagay-bagay, di ba? You're a provocateur. You always stay ahead, and you're always ahead in the game that we call life, or whatever that is, in the industry, in business, in learning. If you are always ahead, you are better at anticipating things, and then has the power and the capability and the capacity to actually do it on Monday morning.
Yeah.
Imagine
So
that.
this is um not. I mean, did you see yourself before or naisip niyo po ba dati na magiging futurist kayo? And how future thinking help you or change you as a person?
Of course, like anyone else, di ba? It wasn't in my mind. It's not really a part of my journey, because I didn't know what my future was. I knew what I liked. I was a political scientist and a public administration practitioner, But then at some point, I felt bored, and then I started searching for something different. And then when I searched for it, fortunately I saw about this idea of futures thinking, and then I have undergone the process of learning what future was. And then when I started hearing about this futures thinking, lost of the future, learning how to do the tools and methods, then I realized it was an insight, aha moment, di ba? Because once you see an insight, it cannot be unseen. And then I felt at that very moment, of my life, in that workshop, this is what I want to do. I want to be a futurist. And then I realized that the future was my future.
So I think
That sounds amazing.
for
Parang
someone who loves
napaka-exciting, no?
Nag-agree din yung rooster ata sa akin eh.
Parang
yes,
naisip
Sir
niya yata yung
Sherman.
future niya.
Naisip ko yung future ko, Sir
Naisip niya yung
Sherman.
future niya.
Oo, di ba?
Like,
See?
Kung paano niya maiwasan maging tinola in the future. Baka
sa
yun
mga
yung
viewers
naisip niya.
natin, no? I hope kapag bored kayo, like Sir Sherman, naging bored lang naman siya sa buhay niya before.
Yes.
So, eto na siya
Dito
ngayon.
siya dinala.
Hindi na ako bored.
Hindi ka na bored.
Hindi na ako bored.
Overboard na.
Hindi
Over,
naman. I wouldn't say overboard. I'm alive.
yeah. Kasi you do what you like, you do what you love,
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Hindi yung before
Yeah.
na,
Yeah,
yes,
that's I've actually, when I was doing this futures thing, that is the way I envisioned my today was
yeah,
back then, and was an unimaginable present. But when I learned futures, things started to be things started to shape up, and I knew what I wanted. And when I knew what I wanted, it's time to do the work. And then
yeah.
it's a process. You have to remember that this is a process. Everything is a process.
And the
So
viewers,
basically, Sir Sherman. Okay, go ahead, Angelica.
yeah, I mean, for the viewers, like, that not because you're bored and you want to do something. Hindi ibig sabihin na you get it easily. Like bored ka, oh, I want to be like this, I want to be like that. It's not just, as you said, Mr. Sherman, it's not like a click of a finger na makukuha mo yung bagay na gusto mo. And you need to do the work
Mhm.
to achieve what you envision for your future. I that's what I
Yeah, that
get.
that was my story. But of course, people has different ways by which they are provoked to
Mhm.
learn new things. Some would go for, they would like to enhance themselves further. They want to be ahead of the game, and continuingly expand and deepen, increase their capacity to always get ahead and stay ahead. And they learn different things. Yes.
Ayun, Miss Joanna?
So, how many years? So, yung ilang taon na po kayong how do I say it? For how many years that you are a futurist? So,
Yeah.
while you were learning the process, did you envision doing this before? Sharing what you know about futures thinking.
Oh yes, 12 years ago I did, when I learned about this, and there was an aha moment. I used the tools that I've been teaching. I used it to myself, right? Like one particular tool that I use is the futures triangle. Wherein you try to map the past, the present, and the future. And by mapping the past, the present, and the future, it enables you to think, okay, what's the most plausible future here? Diba? For me, for the next 3 years or 5 years of my life. But then, of course, I'm always a provocateur. Like 12 years ago, I tried to envision myself as a futurist. How might it look like to be a futurist? And today, I've worked for it. You did it by doing it. 3 weeks ago, or was that last month, I was elected by the Association of Professional Futurists as its chair. The APF is like, you have 500 members, futurists all over the world, and they have given me the opportunity to lead the organization. That wasn't part of. Yes,
Congratulations.
yes. Yeah.
Congratulations, sir.
Thank you.
Good. I think viewers also, and me and Joanna is curious about this. So, what is future? What is futures exactly? What is futures literacy?
Yeah. Bottom line is that futures literacy is a skill set, a capability, you know, uh, to use. Take note of the word use. Okay, to use the future as an asset, a tool, and resource that you can employ in the present.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, it's like
Um,
your computer literacy, diba? You know how to read and write, and by
yeah,
reading and writing, you learn how to do coding, and by learning how to do coding, you learn how the process of algorithm, and by learning how to do algorithms, you build things. So imagine if you are future literate,
you
you know?
Yeah.
develop.
Yeah,
You
It's really
develop.
a learning process. It's a
Yeah.
step-by-step process, ika nga. Para makuha mo yung gusto mong future.
Um,
yeah, it's a journey.
if someone wants to be a futurist and that someone doesn't know him or herself, ano po yung advice na pwede niyong um, ibigay sa kanya to become a futurist or a successful futurist in the future?
Learning futures thinking need not have to be like you end up becoming a futurist. That's not the point. We don't learn futures literacy or futures thinking in order for you to become yourself a futurist. The end game here is that you develop a futurist mindset. And by developing a futurist mindset, you will realize, you will feel that the future is actually close to your heart, that the future is where the heart is, because you're all going to live there, isn't it not? We're all going to live there.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Tama.
And when you learn it, when the future becomes close to your heart, that is where the future become an intimate thing, yeah, that you treasure, that you'll have to work on, that you value the most, because that's your future, di ba?
So of course, everyone wants to have a good future, wants to have a
Yeah.
successful future.
Pero syempre parang now that we know about futures literacy, parang nainip ako bigla dun sa future ko. Parang gusto ko nang dalhin yung future ko sa present ko. Alam niyo yun? Yung ganong
Well,
feeling.
yeah,
Yeah.
I felt,
Yeah.
yeah, I felt
Yeah.
excited about
Yeah, the
na you can do
future of.
that pala.
Yeah, Joanna, no, this I think I need to point out here that the future is not something out there. The
yeah,
future, which leads us to the basic idea of that the future is now. The future is now. It is not out there 10 years, 15 years, 20 years ago. You might imagine your future, your preferred future to happen by 2030, but when you have a futurist mindset, the 2030 can be your Monday morning.
So
and
Yeah.
I guess dapat no, yung mga tayo especially us, yun
yeah,
dapat ang mindset na kine-carry out natin. Para hindi tayo napupunta dun sa parang routine na ulit-ulit na lang yung nararanasan natin, especially when it comes to failures and trauma. So, we advise everybody na as much as possible, let us try to have this
yeah.
future thinking capacity.
And I think
Right,
it's good.
Angelica?
Yeah, I think it's good to live for the moment, but I think it's also good that you envision now what do you want in the future? What do you see? Oh, I mean, 20, 50 years from now. You know. Thank you so much, Sir
Yeah,
Sherman, for
and again, as I've said, just want to reiterate that the future is an experiential verb. It is not like
Yeah.
a chronological time. I would like to point that out. While we have time horizon, it's not even about that. It's about experiencing the future now. So future can be applied. The future is everywhere. But you can apply it in public health, in tourism, in disaster management, in strategic planning, in personal coaching, in design thinking,
Yeah.
whatever, everything has a future, right?
And
So you
and
can actually apply it in any ways you can.
and
Yes,
yung
definitely.
yung future niyo po, I mean, as a person, like I know I have a future, but what surrounds me have a future. Like the government have a future, and that future of the government actually affects me, you know.
Mm.
And and
Exactly.
and the people or the people who surrounds me, their future actually affects me. So
Oh yeah.
that's
And
how I
yeah, and that is why in futures thinking, when you do that at an institutional or corporate or organizational level, it is a process wherein you create a shared narrative about the future. Diba? That's what's important, diba? Of course, you cannot do your future alone. Your future is connected with other futures out there. But then you have to find a way to process it in order for you to create a shared vision about the future, especially at the national level, diba? Now the question is that the future that you want, diba? If you think that the future that is like shown to you is not the future that you want, then you have to question that. Would that future enable you to achieve your personal future? Is your corporate future linked to your personal future? Diba? Those are the questions that we normally ask in a futures thinking process. Because all this future has to be aligned in one way or another. Diba? Because your preferred future might not be the preference of others. Diba? It might
Yeah.
even destroy the future of others. That's where risk thinking comes in. But then the point here is that we need to learn how to build a shared vision about the future, so that everybody becomes empowered and that they have the chance to actually experience the future that they want. No.
yeah. Thank you for that. Sir. Um, in a short moment, we learned a lot.
Yeah.
We we have or we got enlightened about what is future thinking, what is foresighting, and I know that you have your own live learning series. So can you share what do viewers expect or what they can expect from your live learning series, sir?
Yes,
Sir
sir.
Sher?
Oh, yes, of course. What we had today is just the tip of the iceberg. Diba? It's just like scratching the surface.
Yeah.
But in the learning masterclass, that we'll have, like we have three learning master classes here. One is Futures Thinking 101. Another one is Actionable Gamification. And the third one is Gaming Strategic Foresight. That this is a learning. The learning process here is action learning. When you say action learning activities, it's not like lecture. I'm not gonna do lectures here. What you will do here is to learn how to use the tools of futures thinking, and futures literacy. And definitely you will immerse yourself into the future and feel, create, enable yourself to imagine the future better, and feel it, how it feels like to live in that future by learning the tools and the methods. The approach here is highly gamified. It's all games, because why? The future is always entangled with gaming, and things becomes more exciting and adventurous when we game things, instead of the
Yeah.
traditional lecture type,
Yes.
wherein after the lecture it becomes, you're overwhelmed by data, you're stressed out. But this one, the process is gamification tools and methods, virtually, of course, virtually.
That sounds really exciting. And like what Sir Sherman says, we encourage everybody to check out his live learning series with Esme, and I'm sure hindi masasayang yung panahon ninyo because you will gain so much more than you will expect na magagamit nyo in the future.
Yeah. And in this kind of settings, we already enjoyed ourselves talking with Mr. Sherman, no?
Yeah.
what more if you actually have a longer period of time listening and uh, you know, getting informations na hindi stressful, hindi overloading, and I think you should really, really, really check out Mr. Sherman's live learning series. So thank you for that. Thank you so much, Professor Sherman, for sharing your expertise with us. I am sure those who are watching right now cannot wait already to chart their futures and see the changes that might happen in their lives. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Welcome to the future, my friends.
So before we end this webinar, sir, is there anything that you want to plug, promote, or maybe you can just do a shout out to all our viewers?
Yeah, of course. Yep. I'm inviting everyone here who are listening, who are not listening, and will see this conversation later. I'm inviting you, to immerse in your future by learning the power of foresight. Because if you learn the power of foresight, that everything becomes possible. So thank you very much.
Yes. Once again, thank you, Sir Sherman. And for everyone who attended this meaningful webinar, all of you can get a digital certificate of your attendance. Just head on to our website at www.esme.ph or click on the link that we posted in the comments section below. Make your own account and navigate to the title of the webinar that you joined in today.
Before this webinar comes to a close, I would like to invite everyone who wants to learn more and increase their knowledge and skills. Just visit our website at www.sme.ph. Again, www.esme.ph. We offer a wide range of masterclass courses, including our live learning series, which Mr. Sherman had. And those of you who wants to enroll based in whatever relevant to your passion, career, and interests, we hope to see you in our live learning series.
Yes, that's right. Again, we thank everyone for choosing to spend your time with us. I'm sure no amount of time was wasted because we had so much to learn that we can use in the future, especially galing sa ating speaker na si Sir Sherman. So, again, sir, thank you very much for sharing your time and effort and a tip of the iceberg of your expertise about futures thinking.
So this has been your host. I am Angelica Pilapil.
And again, I am Joanna Mangaliman of ASME Philippines. It has been a pleasure hosting your learning today. So I hope you have a good evening. See you on our next webinar.
Good evening. And God bless us all. Thank you, Sir Sherman.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
There is this adage that says, he who predicts the future lies even if he tells the truth. Personally, I use this wise saying as a compass in order for me to understand, appreciate the true nature of the future. That it is driven by complexity, chaos, disorder, randomness. But then each and every human being has the ability and the capacity to anticipate the future that does not exist yet. But the question is, how might you use the future to innovate and change the day? How might you develop the capacity and capability to understand a future that is emerging and unpredictable? How might you develop the capability to use the future as an asset, a resource, and a tool to spark personal transformation and organizational transformation? And well, of course, how might you develop that anticipatory capacity to spark emerging opportunities and wicked problems? How might you grow and nurture a futures thinking mindset in order for you to create, imagine and invent the future that you truly desire? I am Shermon Cruz, a senior professional futurist, and Director of the Center for Engaged Foresight. In partnership with ESME Philippines, we have curated and designed 3 live learning sessions for you and your organizations to develop that futures literacy capability to imagine, anticipate, build alternative future worlds, and invent the futures that you want. And these 3 live learning sessions are Futures Thinking 101, Gaming and Strategic Foresight, and Actionable Gamification. This 3 live learning session is a unique opportunity for you to experience the power of foresight. It was designed as an organic, participatory, and it is a collective intelligence platform to enable you to design and invent and use the future to innovate and transform today. So, what are you waiting for? Sign up now, join us, and welcome to the future.